Welcome back, everybody. It is Sunday, so it's time for another episode of our Watchmen breakdown. We are now on chapter 9, last fourth of the issue of this whole story as we go. Chapter 9, largely just a philosophical kind of conversation between Lori and Dr. Manhattan. Little short cameos from some of the other characters, but The Darkness of Mere Being, the title of this chapter. Um, Again, an issue where I think this is something that kind of set it up. This is all a philosophical debate about life, about the value of life. Basically, Lori and Doctor Manhattan kind of contrasting their viewpoints. Mike, I'll kick it to you for your reaction on this issue. Rereading it, we're going one issue a week, breaking it through. So we come to this after a lot of action with getting Rorschach out of jail and all that, and the death of Hollis. We pivot to this. What were your thoughts on the issue?
Um, One of my immediate thoughts, and I was about halfway through because I just got finished reading a bunch of other comics. It was like how dense each issue is. Uh,
Hmm.
there's a lot of prose in there, and it's not light prose. He throws a lot of meat at you as a reader. And for me, as a comic book reader, I always like when they throw more in there. I mean, I love the art, but the story is what always captures me. And I love the fact that we're reading one issue at a time. It really helps you focus on and digest the issue week over week. So for those of you that are following along and just reading one issue a week, let me know how your journey's going. But yeah, there's just a lot in here. And, we find out that the comedian is really Lori's father. And, she has one mission. She has to save the world, right?
Fifth,
She's
fifth,
got one
convince
mission.
John to save the world. Yeah.
And she has to argue with her ex-boyfriend or whatever. Oh, and also he knows that she's been fooling around with dad. And
Yeah.
like, you put a woman in that position, it's like, how is she going to pull off this miracle? And, John is so stoic and in his own thoughts. He's almost, it's like he's in a different dimension. But I love the way Alan Moore like incorporated the childhood moment of hers that John makes her relive, and
Snow globe. Yeah.
the broken snow globe, and the little pocket of air that was the universe of the snow globe, and how he transposes it to the crystal palace that John creates on Mars to impress Lori. But he forgets that, oh yeah, she needs to breathe air. And he brings her in there, and so he kind of puts her in the globe, in the snow globe. And eventually, she brings the crystal palace crashing down, just like when she was a kid and broke the snow globe. But so much stuff in there. um, her chance encounter with the comedian as a
Hmm.
child, and it takes you back in history. And then, all of her thoughts and what she said kind of echoing at the end of the issue as she's trying to make an impact on John. And he's just above the fray, and she's getting frustrated, because he's so in his thought space that nothing matters. Everything's just atoms and quarks, anyways. And look how beautiful things turned out here on Mars. And she's just like, there's no point in this. And I love the point where she said, the part where she said, John, I'm not getting through to you. Just send me back to burn up with everybody else. This argument's going nowhere. And that was just really powerful to me, as well as it ended up being to John. And I think you see a change in heart in that character when he realizes she'd rather just be down there. And you see that he still has that little sliver of humanity that she pulls on inadvertently almost. And it shocks him into understanding how wonderful and terrible life is. And that just, goes, I think, to the heart of Alan Moore as a writer. And as an observer, as a writer, you explore these little things about humanity. You expound on them, you create your characters out of them, and you create your worlds by exploring humanity and all of its intricacies, both the beautiful things and the ugly things, but it's all together.
There's the good quote at the end with Manhattan where he goes like, "Come dry your eyes, for you are life rarer than a quark and unpredictable." And basically, all she's experienced her whole life, everything he knows about her, convinces him like, no, you're an extremely rare thing that's worth protecting. And I think the cool thing, like you mentioned, one of this is Moore had laid these little things out in all of the issues that feature Dr. Manhattan, where there's that slightest sliver of humanity, right? It's the little photograph that he goes to get of his ex-girlfriend. It's when Lori leaves and he's like holding her clothes and looking at it. And it's real subtle one panel things, but all of those pay back here in this ninth issue. I think one of the cool things about this is, like you said, it's dense. It's a lot of reading. And you kind of see where Watchmen gets that reputation of being kind of beyond a comic book for some people, where it's on that time list of things. And that this is a fantastic philosophical conversation. It reminded me a lot of the Daredevil and Punisher debate in that episode of the TV series where they had Daredevil and Punisher on the rooftop. And it's a good
Yes.
30-40 minutes of those two, just debating their perspectives on killing and not killing their villains. And with this, what's so cool is, again, because he spends so much time on all of these characters, you really feel like you know Laurie and you know John well enough, and they're written so consistently that you're never bored by it. And that's one of the things that I love about Watchmen is I love and hate. This is so good because Moore's so good at doing those things that no one gets punched in this comic. Doesn't make you go, oh, well, boring. The problem is he's a unique talent, and I think you can kind of see in this comic the building blocks where we get so much decompression now, where we get so many things like this. And if you don't have that deft touch that he does of knowing when to build the stakes, raise things, layer things together, it falls apart. That's the part that always stands out to me. I read this is like, man, these 12 issues are the first nine that we've read. He knew every single detail of every single panel and wove it all together. It's a beautiful construction. It's like a tapestry of things together. It just works so well.
And how about the little touches that Gibbons puts in? Like, for example, um, this scene when she goes from the Crystal Palace and she
Hmm.
picks up the chalice, and then all of a sudden she's back in time when she's 13. She's in the workout room, and they talk about all the generations of struggle. What purpose did they ever achieve? And all that effort, and whatever did it lead to? And it shows her back in the gym when she's 13. She's training and all that effort she put in, and what it led to was her, and it just is such a great transition. Like, all of a sudden, this little two panels, where she's holding the chalice and then she's holding the dumbbell when she's 13. I mean, I thought that was great. And there was another, you know, just great stuff
Oh
that,
no, the little reflections and things he throws in there. There's that scene where she's holding the snow globe and you see her little like face reflected in the snow globe while looking through it. He
yeah,
does such a good job with the details in this. I think the other thing that's interesting, in addition to just the
the
fantastic art,
breathtaking, the landscape.
oh, the landscape shots that you get
Oh
in this
my
from Gibbons are
God, they
so
were,
well done. The coloring throughout as well. Again, this looks different than any other issue, which was really cool. In that, Watchmen is a very grimy and kind of gritty story, and then you get this, John Higgins doing the coloring in this. You do get this almost picturesque landscape that's there on Mars that really contrasts
and
to the
then this
majority of the
page
story.
here where they're going through the fogs in the valley, and
Hmm.
then it leads to the cigar smoke. I mean, that's Gibbons, adding his genius to Moore's to put the visuals together.
No, you have that, and it just all works so well. And I think, you know, last couple things we can talk here. I think one of the interesting thing that Moore continually does in these issues that works so well, you revisit the same events from different perspectives, right? That first meeting of the Watchmen or the Minutemen and all of them together, we've seen that from like four different perspectives at this point. And then this point, you know, you finally get Laurie's perspective on it, and I've loved that tool in the storytelling in that it very much mimics real life. And that I think one of the interesting things, like I'm old enough now, I've gone to high school reunions and stuff like that. And you'll remember something from high school just from your perspective. And then you could, like, I remember playing basketball and I remember our homecoming game. And for me, all I remember was that I missed the last shot of the game. And my teammates will be like, "Oh, dude, you played so well that night. You did this right, and you did this right, and you had the." All I remember is one thing of it. They remember something else. Someone else remembers something else. They remember a great play they did. They don't even remember what I did in the game. And it's funny that that's how life goes, where time and distance, one event from so many perspectives can register so differently with so many people. And I love that he keeps revisiting that scene because it shows so much about the perspectives of all these characters and how they view things. It's just a fantastic storytelling piece. I think the only complaint that I would have, and I think this is the only issue so far that I would have with it, and you pointed this out to me when we were discussing this before, John's turnaround is a little quick. I think that's the
Yeah,
only thing is the majority of this issue, it very clearly feels like Laurie's losing the debate. And then
yeah.
I thought it was a little rushed at the end. That's the only complaint I'd have. Again, I think it pays off on a lot of great things. To me, it seemed a bit rushed. Is that what your thoughts were on it as well? That John's kind of turnaround was a slight bit rushed?
I do. I feel that although Lori was destined to lose the debate, and he predicted she would be crying, which she wasn't. She was just mad, and she makes her point to him. I guess you can't see everything in the future, John, because this debate is over and my eyes are still dry, and
Hmm.
something to that effect. And it's almost like in an instant, John turns on a dime when he's laying out this very logical case why nothing matters. You know, it doesn't matter what happens to Earth, everything will blow up and burn, and it's all just atoms and they'll just get reconfigured into something else.
Hmm.
And, he has such a hard line on that perspective for him to change that quickly. But maybe it was the urgency that he was losing Lori and the respect,
Yeah.
and
No.
he was forced into a corner. And it's almost like, Manhattan is two different people. There's the before the accident, John, and then
Hmm.
there's after the accident, Manhattan. And for decades now, he's just been Manhattan. He's been kind of a tool for the military industrial complex, and trying to solve these complex problems of humanity. But he still harkens back to that time, that photo with him and his first girlfriend. He's still striving to grab some of that humanity back from who he was. And at the last minute, and we can all relate, right? We've had arguments with our significant others,
Where
and
there's
we,
finally that breaking point that you go, you know what, dang it, I was wrong. Or, you know,
yeah,
that it just
yeah,
convinces you it's not worth the fight anymore or anything. Yeah.
it's not worth it. You love this other person, and you cave, and you make sure that all is right, with you again. And so I guess I can kind of see it, but it did feel a little rushed.
No, I think one of the cool things that this does, and again, one of the revelation that, you know, the comedian is Laurie's dad. I think, again, it's a huge piece of this, and that it shows how infinitely complex it is. And eventually maybe that's more the breaking point for John as he realizes, man, you guys are all just so complex as human beings. He feels so distant from it. And then just seeing her life and all the complexity that exists and how that kind of breaks her sort of, you know, convince her. Again, it's just brilliant by Moore. I mean, there's some cool, I thought there was a great, he's kind of walking her through Mars and he's like, you know, he's showing her all the stuff and he's talking about, she's saying this, well, there's not this and there's no people and there's no infrastructure or anything. He's like, well, and he points out all the negatives and like, would this be improved by an oil pipeline, right? And just
Yeah.
it's a great debate. It's so well written. It's funny in that this is the type of issue that drives me crazy in modern comic books, and that I hate decompression issues that are just discussions typically. However, when someone does it well, this is why it works, and it's why you can do those issues. I guess you just have to be Alan Moore to kind of do it. And it's weird because
Yeah.
I'm not the biggest fan of his, but man, he does it so well in this book. But that's our thoughts on chapter 9, folks. Let us know what you guys think below. 3 chapters left: 10, 11, and 12. So we conclude Watchmen. We'll go one a week. So we will see you next week for chapter 12, for chapter 10. Let us know your guys' thoughts down below. As always, folks, thank you for watching. God bless you.
Thanks, everybody.